All right. So pumped to be here with everyone today, virtual and in person and hybrid and everything in between. My name is Caroline Mayu. I use she or her pronouns. I have done many things in my career. I'm currently in-house at a biotech supporting DE&I. I've also worked for myself and been an entrepreneur, working on both issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion and innovation and startup capacity building generally. So for today's panel, our theme is inclusive customer success. We are joined by an incredible panel, and I will have them introduce themselves in just a moment. The major thing I want to share before we get started is please jump in and ask questions. Want it to be interactive. The second is inclusive is a big word, and diversity is a big word, and equity are big words. And our panelists represent a wide array of different perspectives. But as it relates to disability, keep in mind that disability is 25% of the general public globally. I identify as being part of the disability community, are inclusive of chronic illness, mental illness, physical disability, neurodivergence, and natural aging. We are your biggest customer market, period. The same can also be said for English as a second language or people who are external to the US. In addition to English, top language spoken around the world include Mandarin and Hindi and Spanish and so many more. So in general, when we think about who we are, what is diverse about ourselves, who is our customer, and what is their diversity invisible or visible, really want to challenge ourselves to just think differently about inclusivity and who is our customer and all that good stuff. But welcome all of your questions. So I'm going to hand it over to our panelists. So panelists, please give a very brief, oh, and I forgot to do a visual introduction for myself. This is so important for both disability culture as well as anyone who might not be looking at a screen right now. I am a Caucasian woman. I am wearing a blue tank top. I have very short, choppy brown hair, and I am sitting in a booth at work. So it kind of looks like I am in a little spaceship. And now I get to turn it over to our panel. So quick introductions before we get into questions. So name, your startup, a quick visual introduction, and then we'll get into the questions. So Adriana, please kick us off.
Yes, hello, I'm Adriana Malazzi, founder of Puffin Innovations. I'm a Caucasian woman with short, dark brown hair with some silvers in it. I'm wearing a blue top with 3 brown buttons in the center on the top. I'm in a power wheelchair with a purple headrest cover and a blurred background.
Awesome. And Yami, would love to hear, tell us who you are and your awesome org.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here today. My name is Yami Payano. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Science Week. I am a Afro-Latina female. I am wearing a blue shirt, and I have glasses. And Science Week is an all-inclusive platform for people that have hearing loss. So we provide our clients anything from closed captioning to American Sign Language support, which is really new and has never been done. So a deaf individual can sign into any regular camera and we would translate that into English. And then we take spoken word, sort of like CC'd at the bottom that you can choose Spanish, English, or any other language. You would have the possibility to select American Sign Language, and we would translate that in real time to ASL. So that's a little bit about us, and I'm really excited to kick this conversation off because, like Caroline said, we are the biggest base of any major corporation or any startups out there. So thinking about customer inclusion is very important.
Awesome. And Dennis, I think maybe in and out here is our third panelist, and he is experiencing tech issues. So we will have him introduce himself when he comes back. But Dennis, his startup is related to language, which is awesome because it's at the intersection of both Adriana and Yami with both disability and language. So very cool thread throughs. All right. So our first question, Adriana and Yami and Dennis, when he joins, would love to hear from you. Tell us a little bit about your venture's founding story. Why did you come to be? And when we think about customer inclusion, has your customer shifted over time? Did you start off saying, this is my customer, and then it became someone else? So I'd love to hear a little bit about the founding story and a little bit about the evolution and what were the surprises along the way. Uh, Yami, I'll throw it over to you first on this one, just to mix it up.
Sounds good. So really, Science Week started with my co-founder, Nicholas or Nico Kelly. He is one of my best friends. He himself is deaf. He went to the National Institute of the Deaf and RIT, and he struggled a lot through his day-to-day activity, right? So if I start signing right now, there's a very low chance that anybody in the audience can understand what I just said. And seeing that, he sort of roped me and my third co-founder, Nicholas Wilkins, who's an ex-Googler and mathematician, AI expert by trade. He's also fluent in American Sign Language. And myself, I bring more of the business and government acumen. And we really decided to start Science Week with the goal of making communication more accessible for the deaf and hard of hearing community. Sort of through that journey, we really started on the intersection of how can we make it so that it's easy for corporations to integrate this customer base and also employees that are from the deaf and hard of hearing community. So we started really heavily and focusing on the sort of sign language recognition, which has never been done before. And we're sort of one of a kind as of now. And then we sort of noticed the need for not only the hearing person to understand what's happening, but also for the deaf and hard of hearing individual to receive that contact and information. So when we're really talking about meeting customers where they are, right, we noticed that it was very important to have content in American Sign Language because that just increased the understanding of the deaf and hard of hearing individual. So sort of we then became sort of this dual communication platform for deaf and hard of hearing individuals that are 48 million in America. That's 14% of our population that people really don't think about. And that number is slowly increasing, especially when we have older age included there. So how can we make content and accessibility more accessible? So to your point, what I really learned early on is that diversity, equity, and inclusion is not just about race and gender, right? There is a need to talk about accessibility, and many people, you can't say you care about diversity, equity, and inclusion and not talk about accessibility, because I think that there's a disconnect there, because inclusion is an all-encompassing word. I would say that the other thing that the sad reality of a founder is that we need to be making a business case to enable and propel accessibility technology forward. The fact of the matter is that Science Week has to be a sustainable venture. All of us have to be sustainable ventures to survive. So really shifting from a mentality at times of like, hey, it is the right thing to do, but creating that business case, that compelling case of the fact that the disability community, people with disability hold almost trillions and trillions of dollars. So how do we capture that, and how do we communicate that to brands that might not be thinking about this from an inclusion perspective? And also the fact that it's required by many legislation, like the American with Disability Act, the Rehabilitation Act, the Fair Housing Act. So you have a plethora of policies that are not just empty promises, because many people have been taken to court. So really thinking about the business case. And I think lastly, but not least, is have to shift the mind of seeing social ventures as a bad thing. I really have learned as a founder that social ventures are the future of humanity as we think of the largest problems facing humankind, anything from climate change to accessibility. So really, me, I was often called, Science Week is still called a social venture. So how do we embrace that? And how do we actually use that to propel the business and the community forward? So that's some of the learnings and some of my journey as a founder, and some of the sad and the ups and downs of this journey.
Awesome. Thank you, Yami. Dennis, it looks like you have joined us. Can you confirm if you can hear me? All right, Dennis, are you with us? Let's see. So Dennis, it still seems like there's a little bit of a delay and a lag and imperfect internet. All right, we are still working on that one. So Dennis, I'm wondering if there's a way for you to call in. And as we are working on that, and whenever we have that sorted out, we are going to plug you right in. That said, for the sake of time, Adriana would love to hear from you. What is the founding story of Puffin, and who was your customer, and has your customer evolved over time?
Yeah, so this is Adriana speaking. Yeah, so Puffin is a hands-free mouth-operated input device via Bluetooth, and we use machine learning and AI. So the device adapts to the user instead of the other way around. It is for people with significant physical disabilities and limited mobility in their upper extremities. And so I have cerebral palsy. I stopped breathing during birth, and it caused brain damage. And this was something that initially started as a need for myself, as a need for other people like myself, who had similar challenges of not being able to use a smartphone or use a computer easily. And so that is why we created this device. I wouldn't say our customer base has shifted. I would say more so expanded. So we originally were focusing on people with spinal cord injuries or people with some form of paralysis. But we soon learned, after going through some accelerators, such as Mass Challenge, that there are other use cases if we just simply change the form factor. So the military is interested in our tech. Also, fire and police can access our tech, having hands-free access while they're performing their jobs. So, as I said, it's not really a shift per se, but more of an expansion of our customer base. And Yami really put everything, what I usually say to people, and why it's important that disability is included in DEI, and often forgotten. It is often forgotten in the conversation. But we are one of the largest minority groups in the world that anyone can become a part of at any point in their lives, whether it be temporary, if you have an accident, break your arm or your leg, or what have you, whether it be situational, you're holding your baby and you can't use your hands to do something, or whether it be permanent, like myself, spinal cord injury or a CP, you can become part of this community at any point of your life. And so it's really important for people to understand that this is a growing market, especially in the aging population. Something that someone said that I love is I may have CP, which is cerebral palsy, but my money doesn't. And I love that because it's true. My money has no limitations. All of our money is exactly the same. It's equal value, no matter whether we have a disability or not, what gender we are, what sexual orientation we are, or what race we are. And people need to acknowledge that.
Boom. I just wrote that in the chat to make sure, visually and written. I may be mixed race, I may be an immigrant, I may be of various sizes, I may have CP, I may be neurodivergent, and my money does not. I love that line. Thank you, Adriana. Boom. Just going to do a check-in for Dennis. Dennis, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. And can you hear me?
We can, and it doesn't matter if we don't have video. We can take what we get, but I hear you perfectly.
Good.
Oh, awesome. All right. So, Dennis, our question for you, please take a moment to introduce ourselves. We want to know who you are. We want to know, please give a brief visual description of yourself. We want to know a little bit about your venture. And please tell us, as well as what your venture does, what is the founding story? Why do you exist? What was the customer need?
I'm co-founder of Vidby. Vidby, this is artificial intelligence translation technology. We translate videos to 67 languages and 60 dialects. This is not captures, not subtitles. This is voice-to-voice translation. This is the first ever made translation from any languages to any language with voice. You can also translate simultaneously, like to different languages in one moment. And why we decided to create this program, this software, when it was at the beginning of 2014, when nobody knows, when nobody believed that it's possible to translate to any language with artificial intelligence. It was like a crazy idea. Many people just ask us, no, it's impossible. It's so difficult. But nevertheless, we started to create this, and by the end of last year, by the end of 2021, the product was ready, and now we are completely on the market, and you can download your videos and translate to different languages. You can choose different voices, male, female, children, anything. And so we paid attention to another group of underserved people. 7.8 billion people live in the world now, and just about 1.35 billion speak English, but just 360 million, just 0.3 billions has English as a native language. So it's just about 4% of the world population. They prefer to speak English, to listen everything, to watch everything in English. Other people just even if they know English, nevertheless they prefer to communicate at home. They communicate in English, and that is why we have a very big underserved group of people who really want to study, who desire to find information, who wants to watch different documentary videos, different learning videos, participate in any kind of events like we have today. But at the same time, they feel themselves not confident. they do not have access to many interesting information. Before we created this program, it was really expensive to translate to different languages. It was time-consuming process when you go to the studio, ask to translate, and then actors during next 2 weeks just make dubbing. But now it's almost simultaneously. Like short videos, we can translate like in seconds. Longer videos we can translate up to 1 day, or very long videos up to 2 days. And now you can easy watch any videos, and spreading information all over the world is not a problem anymore.
Incredible. Thank you, Dennis. One theme I hear emerging is this idea of things are interrelated. They're not bucketed. So when Adriana said this started off as something I needed to be hands-free, it makes total sense that that would also be of interest to law enforcement and the military. Unintended consequence of expanding market when we expand, think differently, ask different questions, not which disabilities, who is someone who needs hands-free access to something. And when it comes to Dennis and people who are not native English speakers, it's not just that all of those people are outside of the United States. This is diaspora. We know the United States is increasingly becoming not primarily, but less white. As a white person, I'm happy to say that out loud. The United States is becoming less white across Black and Brown and AAPI and all of those things. So when we are wired as humans, biologically, evolutionarily, to find safety and comfort in people who look like us, and that means we're likely to think of people who look like us as our customers. But it may not be who you think it is if we stop to ask different questions.
Yes,
So
Caroline, I am agree with you absolutely. And I have one question. What is then the official language of the United States?
I don't know if this is a trick question, Dennis.
According to American Constitution, there is no official language of the United States. There were some attempts to make English official language of the United States, but every time when Congress started to discuss this question, every time they make a conclusion that the diversity of that American is a very diversified society, and they paid attention to the needs of different states. Even once, it was like about 150 years ago, it was a law that to make German official language of the United States. It can be a surprise, but of course the majority also decided not to make German official language of the United States. And so we don't have official language. And about 1/3 of the population of the United States speaks at home other languages than English.
So, Dennis, I did not know that. I knew the official bug of Massachusetts is the ladybug. Like, I know all sorts of obscure, random civics knowledge, and that is definitely not one that I knew. So thank you for that. All right, so want to go a little bit deeper into our individual ventures. So this first one is for you, Adriana. We've talked a lot about disability across all of us. That said, knowing this is disability means so many things, between neurodivergence and physical and chronic illness and natural aging and long COVID. And since it is so broad, I also am happy to say it out loud, there's a lot of stigma for disability. That is why it is so important to say things like, I am part of the disability community. We are a culture and identity. So given the stigma that we know exists, and given that the disability community spans everything else between race, gender, religion, socioeconomic status, what is one piece of advice that you have to begin to get to know the disability community and this incredible customer base?
This is Adriana speaking. Yeah, so I think it's important to given technology nowadays, it's really easy to meet and follow disability advocates online. You know, you people say like, oh, or people who are not familiar with disability in general uh, may meet someone like myself and think they've met the whole population, that I speak for all people with CP, and that is not the case. You met me, and that is who you met. It's me, and I have CP, and I can speak about my experiences, and and I may speak about other people that I know experiences, but that's not. I do not represent a whole population of people. So when you meet someone who has a disability, you've met that one person with a disability, and disability is a spectrum, as you mentioned. And so really, look up one of the mothers of the disability right movement, Judy Hewitt. Look her up. Follow her on Twitter. Follow her on Instagram. She is the most amazing human being in the world. Love her to death. Emily Ladau is an amazing person as well. I mean, they're just the list goes on. Um, and I think just thinking about the baby boomers are aging now, right? And aging is a part of the disability community. You may not be able to walk as well. You may not be able to hear as well. You may not be able to see as well. So these are your customers that you probably already have and have had, and they are aging and gaining, disabilities that they did not have maybe 10 or 20 years ago. So you need to be thinking about those customers who you want to retain. If they can't use your technology as they're aging or as they become disabled, then you're losing those customers. So you need to really take that into account as well. Another thing is, use real people with real disabilities. Do not create or develop your product or service in a vacuum with preconceived ideas of disability, because more chances than not, those preconceived ideas are nowhere near actual experiences of people with disabilities. The media does not portray disability in its real form. It's always that, oh, pity me, or pathetic person, or struggling and suffering, which is something that I'll be talking about tomorrow, actually. And that is not the reality of disability. We lead fulfilling lives just like anyone else. We have good days, we have bad days, just like anyone else. We are human beings, and that is something that's really important for people to remember. Remember is that people with disabilities are people. They are people first. Um, and so if you think of that, then you can design accordingly.
I love that. I mean, the two things I heard from that, which apply so importantly to the disability community and also across the entire spectrum of experience, whether it be age or gender or race or ethnicity. If you don't know how to strike up a conversation, or you're worried about saying the wrong thing, and that is a common experience as an ally, I don't know what to say, and I don't know what to ask, and I'm not going to say anything. Follow people online. You do not need to work hard to follow a hashtag like disability to whatever forum you are using, the Twitters, the LinkedIns, the TikToks. I think I'm on everything other than the TikToks. I'm too old for that, but I see it on Twitter. or I see it on Instagram. That's a great way to meet people. And that's exactly what I do. For example, for me to build empathy with what it is like to move through the world as a Black woman or a deaf person, that is exactly one way that I familiar myself with additional perspectives that aren't my own. And then use people, make sure you integrate potential users into your entire process. Basically, innovation or product development or decision making can be boiled down to we come up with ideas, we select ideas, and then we try out the idea. And that is a constant cycle of ongoing learning, but it is never a bolt-on at the end to say, now we're going to think about making this useful to more people. It has to be from the beginning, regardless of what the customer base is. So thank you for those two important points. So Dennis, Vidby offers customers and the world automatic video translation and dubbing services. Are your customers using the tool for entertainment, for business collaboration, for humanitarian, and curious if there were any surprises there, again, to this idea of not who, but how and expansion. What did Vidby set out to do, and what are the additional uses that people are using it for?
First of all, education, I think so. Because now everything came online, and people try to find the new knowledge online. And of course, the biggest database, the biggest number of videos in English, mostly all educational videos, and the biggest universities all over the world produce mostly educational videos in English. And of course, in this case, our service can be really helpful because it's possible to translate fast, and it's possible to translate very cheap. As I said, about 20 times cheaper. And so it's not a problem now. This is the first. Then, of course, if you are a YouTuber, if you create videos on YouTube, and you already have audience of, for example, audience of English language, but your information is really interesting for other nationalities, other countries, of course, you can easily duplicate your channel and start use the same videos, but with another for another audience in another language. And so now we work with some companies that produce videos for YouTubers or directly with YouTubers, and this is a really big chance for them to conquer new audience and spending just less money. This is the second group. Then if you speak about documentaries, it's really easy now to for producers of documentaries to participate in international festivals, for example, and easy find new partners in other countries for professional dubbing by people, or if they prefer to make it with artificial intelligence, it's possible to translate into any language with artificial intelligence. And another group that appeared just recently, different world leaders, different politicians. For example, we translate regularly President Zelensky because he make his speeches for the whole world, and if you translate just into English, it doesn't go to the heart of every people. And if we translate to Brazilian Portuguese, Dutch, Chinese, Hindi, Swahili, Bengali, in this case, everything that we say in your language or in English language goes directly to this country, to the people who really need this information. And if we speak about the spreading of democracy all over the world, very often if we produce information about democracy just in English, Spanish, or German, or some languages of developing countries, it doesn't have any sense for people who live in dictatorship countries. They do not have access to information in their languages about democratic values, about news that has another opinion than their own country has. And so it's possible to go further. There are a lot of other fields how to use artificial intelligence translation technology. Only one, probably it's necessary to say what is not possible to translate. Now it's not possible to translate like plain movies, like Hollywood movies, for example, because very often emotions is much more serious than what actually these people say. For example, if it is a movie about love, very often they have just they say just sounds, oh yes, or something like this. In this case, this translation doesn't work. But in future, like in 5-7 years, we work on this, and in 5-7 years, for sure, we have languages with emotions as well.
Incredible. Yeah. What I love about that as a continued thread is what I originally perceived VidBee to do. It's so much bigger than that. And I think that's something that all of us as founders or startup folk, it's awesome to be surprised sometimes and say it's not what I initially thought, but even better in terms of potential impact, to think about the many different ways we can apply it.
Yes, and even if we speak about marketing, this is another, of course, another story. But if you make your video just in English or just in Spanish, and you when you go online to shop online, if you add videos to your product, people rely on this video and more often buy these exact products. And according to last research, like about 70% of decisions that made by customers, they use videos before they buy something. So if your account doesn't have video or video in another language, so the chance that customers will buy you less. Before this, it was really expensive to translate to hundreds of different languages, for example. But now it's really easy, and all producers can make it, and serve better groups of people that speak not your language.
Awesome. I will say I've seen, for me personally, I love being outside. I have seen a huge increase in video production for products in the outdoors industry, whether that be backpacks or shoes. And for me, it's been helpful even as an English speaker to get to see the product 3D, someone hold it, and especially if we can do that in many languages, that's awesome.
Yeah, this market increased 30% every year, or even more sometimes.
That is a good stat. So Yami, I want to bring it back to you. So it is actually in some ways ironic. You physically are on my screen right now in between Adriana and Dennis. I do not know if that is true for everyone, but also I feel like your venture is also in between because it both relates to language and it relates to disability. So it's a fusion in some ways. But it is we know it is technology that enables accessibility and translation. Curious specifically for the community that you set out to serve, which is the deaf and hard of hearing community. And I do emphasize community because it is both a disability and it is a very specific community and culture. What has been your greatest learning as a founder? And curious how you plan to lead the organization moving forward as a result of what we know is a never-ending learning process.
I think, well, I think that there's a lot of questions in that. I will start by saying that some of my biggest realization for everyone on the call is that the customer acquisition market is $45 billion. The market for retention of customers is $7.8 billion. So we're talking about a tool, right, that allows people to not only acquire a new set of customers, that is the deaf and hard of hearing community, but also retain them, right? So some of the major things that I would say moving forward is the best advice I can give is to right, it's to think about it from a perspective of very early on, how can I be accessible to communities of people with disabilities? So I hear that there's a Q&A that is asking of any suggestions of how startups can be inclusive for their customers. And the easiest way is to go and talk to other startups like ScienceSpeak, right? Or any of the startups in this panel, because we will be able to help you. And what I tell people is that most of what gets me up at night is not let me squeeze every single dollar, but let me make accessibility accessible to all, right? So when I'm talking to my fellow founders that are Yami, I would love to integrate your product, right? I really, really engage in a conversation of intentionality and how do you do that from the get-go. And that is why I made ScienceSpeak, and I encourage everybody to first reach out to other startup founders that are creating accessibility tech in the space, and to also, and most importantly, to bring it up to your senior leadership, depending on where you are in the startup journey, right? Whether you are pre-seed and you're building like any type of platforms, whether it's an educational platform or a fintech, well, how can I make sure that I meet my customers where they are from an early stage all the way to series A, B, C, D, whatever stage you are? I think that it's very important to help founders that to help each other in that endeavor. And the other thing that I will say in terms of, and I'm sorry, Caroline, if I'm not specifically answering your question, but as I move forward in leading ScienceSpeak, I consider myself an able person, right? And for me, it's very important to figure out when to step aside, right? And let the community does its speaking. And I think it's really important for me to, as I do these panels, right? I represent the majority, and I take that as a Black woman with huge privilege, right? So I encourage everybody on the call that even if you don't have a disability and you have never interacted with someone with a disability, that does not mean that they do not exist. It just means that you have been privileged enough to not have to ever think about that. And the same thing goes with race and gender, right? So when thinking about it, as I continue to lead, my main job is really to talk to folks that aren't able body, right? And being able to strike a conversation around what are your questions, right? And how can we make sure that I put you in touch with the community that I'm trying to serve. And at many times the main reason what I would love is to have an API included in platforms like this, so that then I'm not the one that needs to be in this panel, right? And then my co-founder Nico can use his native language of American Sign Language to speak to everyone in this call. And that is what I do it. But I understand that, you know, I can play an integral connecting role, and my role is to bring resources to ScienceSpeak. That's what I tell people, right? My co-founder does the product. My other co-founder does the coding. My job is to bring resources and to elevate this community forward. So that is some of the points that I wanted to bring. And my last thing is, before I pass it on, I did see that someone asked me if ScienceSpeak can also translate digital web apps into ASL. We have an API that does just that. So please feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my information on the chat. Just if you want to start your journey on how do you include accessibility tech, and second, if you want to learn more about ScienceSpeak.
Amazing. I I'm sad because our panel is ending in about 10 minutes, and I would love to do this all day. So we have some questions coming in with just about 10 minutes left. Now is a great time to put any questions into the Q&A poll. And as we are waiting for some of those questions to come in, I want to build upon the next question we were going to ask, which in many ways, and Yami, you're not in trouble for answering the question a different way. That was brilliant. But I want to build upon that because the next question we were going to ask for everyone was the idea of toolkits, and all of these ventures and businesses and solutions that we talked about so far are a platform, and they can complement each other to create ease and access for a diverse customer base. So since we know, given by you can't run a business without hiring other businesses, and that is everything from marketing to a coach to a therapist. Like it takes a village across the tech platforms and the personal support team. So since no one solution for anything is a do-it-all, would love to hear or from Adriana and Dennis, building on what Yami said about collaboration. What is one lesson you've learned about collaboration as it relates to scale or launch or simply networking with other startups?
Can I start with answering this question?
You're already speaking, Dennis. So
okay.
yes.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, that we can give our API to any other services, any other sites, any other portals, and they can use our program, and we can easily install our program to any other site. And in this case, your clients who you serve and give them another services, they can additionally use our service. So we can, and in this case, it can be a win-win cooperation. We can together serve better your clients, and at the same time, you have access to our technology, and you can enrich your portfolio of services, and your clients will be satisfied better.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Dennis. Adriana, is there anything you have to build on the idea of collaboration, loosely speaking, with other startup founders, with other businesses? What does it mean for Puffin?
Yeah. So, since ours is more of a hardware device, and we have a platform as well, but it's strictly hardware, or more specifically hardware. The whole point of our device is to work with other tech. So we welcome that collaboration because the whole point is to become more independent, to be able to use anything that you want to use without limitations. And so we are developing our tech to work with other tech. We envision our tech working with future smart cities. So our device can be used for people to control elevators, call an elevator, right? Open a door. We can already control our environments with the Puffin. And so collaboration is something that we are all about at Puffin, because we see our tech being sort of that key to access all other tech, sort of. And that's what we see and envision for the future. I'm looking forward to accessible self-driving vehicles, because then I can use Puffin to control that and drive for the first time ever in my life. So that, these are the things that we already thinking about and striving for, is that collaboration with other companies with tech, integrating our tech with their
Thank
tech.
you, Anna.
So we're excited about that. Like that excites.
Awesome. Yami, thank you, Adriana. I just got like chills, both because collaboration is how things happen, and because there's a lot going on in the world. But when it comes to what collaborations can unlock in terms of just mobility, access, travel, it's just awesome. But Yami, I saw you speak up. I want to make sure. Was there something you wanted to add?
Well, I was signing that she froze for me on my end, but I do want to add the one point that I would say is that if you are anyone hearing right now in this platform, know that you have the opportunity to catalyze a community that has never been catalyzed before. So if you're a startup in this and you in hearing us, right, integrating with any of our potential platforms, you already have a point of differentiation that many big companies don't have and that many players in your space probably are not even thinking about. So I also tell people that collaboration with tech accessibility can give you an advantage that no one would ever think so. And my perfect example is Apple. Apple was the first one to integrate voice technology into their iPhones. And that is why I think that it was like the only feature that they announced back in the day. And now Apple is where it is. Now, it might have not been just for Siri, but Siri is one of the biggest things that people know about Apple. So I'm just saying here, sign language recognition has never been done before. How do we market to different people that speaks different languages? How do we market to people that might have mobility or sort of need different accessibility through Puffin? So you really have an opportunity to distinguish yourself in your market and really get a customer base that is loyal. Like what we have not mentioned is how sticky this community is and like how sticky is their sort of ecosystem. Once you're in the people with disability community, they're loyal. They'll continue going to you. You'll have higher return on investment and they will share the word because the word spreads like crazy. Something that my co-founder, Nico, his entire family is deaf. By the time I tell something to Nico and we tell something to Nico's mom, by that time I have someone in my email the next day saying, hey, I heard so and so. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity to explore this community and to really, really give them services that they currently won't be able to have unless you talk to people like this panel.
Love it. Yeah, and as it relates to going viral, I totally support that. And we all have those communities, like the mavens. We all have the person we go to learn the thing, whether it be about fashion or technology or a new restaurant that opened. But I absolutely stand by the fact that the disability community loves sharing good examples. So we have a hand. Oh, Stephanie, I was going to go another. Should we close now? I see you.
You can definitely do another question, but then we are coming up on time.
Perfect. So want to confirm we have 3 minutes left. I did not see any other specific questions come in, but one that I would love to close on. It was Francine. You asked, do you have any specific suggestions about how startups can be better at inclusivity? So we have touched upon this theme a lot, but want to a quick sign off from everyone. Would love to hear your one quick closing thought, recommendation for one more suggestion, something we haven't spoken about yet, or reinforcing something we have in terms of how startups specifically can one thing they can do to be more inclusive to their customers. So let's see. Dennis, I will start with you.
Okay, thank you.
One quick one.
Good. I have one gift for Startup Boston Week audience. I will try to share it if our connection allows this.
You to this extraordinary event.
Dennis, I don't think we have the bandwidth for it. If you can stop sharing and simply describe it, or maybe put it in chat, I think that might be the best way to share it.
I am
Let's see, I'm going to pause there. We'll get back to you, Dennis, with the tech. Yami would love quickly, because we have 1 minute left and want to squeeze everyone in. Quick sign off, one last inclusive tip for startups.
If you don't know the answer, go ask someone in the community. You'll find it there.
Love it. Adriana, signing off.
Second that. That's it.
And I'm going to third that. It's okay to ask. You wouldn't hesitate to ask someone how to pronounce their name or when their birthday is. It's okay to ask. Dennis, I did want to give you one last chance because we are at time. Can you summarize your video or describe your one last tip?
Could you watch videos that I shared or not?
We couldn't see any of it because of text, so I just want you to describe it or describe the essence of it because we couldn't see
it was
the
like
video.
my congratulation to the organizers of this event and my wish to participate that I made in Ukrainian, but it was translated by artificial intelligence, but unfortunately because of bad connection nobody. But you can visit my LinkedIn or my Twitter, and I posted this video with my congratulations.
And please put it in chat and share it with Stephanie. We will make sure it gets out there. So we are at time. Thank you. I'll hand it over to you, Stephanie. Thank you so much.